Welcome to The Critique, where today we are analyzing a highly passionate stream of consciousness video transcript that dives into internet drama surrounding Joshua David Evans's controversial upcoming documentary, reactions from figures like Trisha Paytas, and the creator's impending trip to VidCon. Structural segregation of tonal elements is essential for maximizing the emotional weight of a script's core message.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So a key theme running through this material seems to be the tension between protecting vulnerable individuals and reacting to chaotic internet drama. And reading this piece feels like, riding a roller coaster blindfolded.
Oh, completely. You have no idea what's coming.
Right. Like you hit these massive emotional highs when discussing the protection of young people, but then suddenly you drop into these comedic pop culture tangents. Is there a risk that focusing solely on authenticity and stream of consciousness delivery might overlook the audience's need for emotional whiplash protection?
That's clearly laid out. I wonder, though, if we've considered how jarring that really is for the listener. Because, the weakness here is that the script drastically shifts gears from severe, protective stances straight into mundane pop culture observations without any buffer.
Going from 0 to 60.
Exactly. In one breath, they are fiercely defending Oliver, Becky, Alex, and Ella, and they even explicitly mention the producers of the Quiet on Set documentary to underline the severity of the situation.
Which is incredibly heavy, dark subject matter.
Very heavy. But then, almost instantly, the script pivots to reacting to like Lily Allen and David Harbour buying dildos at CVS.
Oh, wow, yeah, that's a massive pivot.
Right, or making jokes about Oscar's fuck-ass wig. This immediate whiplash dilutes the gravity of the Joshua David Evans documentary situation entirely.
I hear what you're saying about separating the CVS jokes from the serious Quiet on Set references. But let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure.
Isn't the whole appeal of this specific creator their messy, authentic stream of consciousness style? Like, if we sanitize this and overstructure it, don't we risk ruining the exact thing their audience tunes in for?
Well, that's a really valid concern. We definitely don't want to sanitize the personality out of the piece. But there is a huge difference between curated chaos and actual cognitive disorientation.
Right.
When you talk about heavy situations, like invoking Quiet on Set, the audience's brain naturally slows down to process that weight. They're preparing for a serious discussion. You simply cannot snap them back into laughing at a pharmacy joke a second later.
It's like asking the audience to attend a funeral and a circus in the exact same room.
That's exactly it. The emotional states are mutually exclusive. Because the audience can't process the shift fast enough, the comedic point just feels, inappropriate.
Or even callous.
Yeah.
Right. So the suggestion here is to reorganize the script into distinct acts that group similar tonal elements together. This allows the audience to properly digest the serious content without immediate comedic distraction.
Okay, I can see that. Let's look at how we can strengthen this in practice. What does an act structure actually look like for a video transcript?
Well, for concrete examples, one approach is to open with an icebreaker act. You handle the excitement of the tour, the Canadian trade discount code for Toronto, and that Lily Allen pop culture reaction right out of the gates.
You establish the baseline rapport early.
Exactly. It satisfies the audience's desire for banter. Then, you utilize a hard transition into the main event, focusing entirely on the serious warnings about the documentary, Trisha Paytas' observations, and protecting the innocent party.
You let that heavy section breathe on its own?
Yes. And finally, conclude with the VidCon confrontation threats to build suspense. These are just a few ways to structure the narrative, but any deliberate thematic grouping will resolve the whiplash.
That makes a lot of sense. Building off that idea of maintaining the audience's emotional focus through structure, we also need to examine how the delivery of the arguments themselves affects the pacing.
Oh, the micro-level pacing. Yeah.
Condensing repetitive verbal loops into sharp, declarative statements creates a more authoritative and propulsive narrative rhythm. Let's look closely at the section discussing Joshua's missteps. Reading this, I kept picturing, a stalling car engine.
A stalling engine? Unpack that analogy for me.
You know when you're driving a manual transmission and you step on the gas, but you haven't quite caught the gear?
Oh, right, yeah.
The engine revs incredibly loud. It makes a ton of noise. It feels intensely emotional, but the car itself isn't actually moving forward. How can we tighten these verbal loops without losing the creator's clearly distressed, authentic voice?
Building on that point, what if we looked at it from the perspective of momentum? Because the weakness here is that the material frequently stalls its own pacing by repeating phrases back to back.
Right. It signals hesitation rather than emphasis.
Exactly. For instance, the author repeats, "We have got to be a little bit serious" 4 separate times in a row.
Wow, 4 times.
Yeah. And later, they repeat, "I don't think he's thought this," obviously meaning through, 4 distinct times. While this conveys raw emotion, the repetition acts as a massive verbal roadblock. It blunts the sharpness of the actual critique against Joshua.
But again, I have to ask, in unscripted content, aren't verbal loops just a natural biological mechanism? Like, it's how people buy time while their brain searches for the next thought.
True, biologically, looping is a buffering mechanism. But when you present that buffer to the audience as the final product, you are demanding that the listener wait for you to catch up to yourself.
You increase the cognitive load on the audience.
Exactly. When they hear the same phrase 4 times, they stop analyzing your argument and start analyzing the fact that you are stuck in a loop. It dilutes your authority.
So, if we want to drop the car into gear and actually accelerate the pacing, what is the best strategy here?
The suggestion is to trim the redundant phrasing entirely and immediately follow a single, strong statement with the supporting evidence. This keeps the argument moving relentlessly forward.
You don't need to wind up. You just swing.
Right. Let's look at concrete examples. Instead of looping the phrase about Joshua not thinking it through, the author could state it once with immediate impact. Like, "Joshua hasn't thought this through. If Colleen retaliates, he will have no support because he's burned every bridge behind the scenes," and changed his YouTube description to a sunflower emoji.
Wait, a sunflower emoji? That is so specific and weird.
I know, but it acts as perfect immediate proof of erratic behavior.
It really does.
Alternatively, turn the "we have got to be serious" loop into a single punchy line. "We have to be serious. You cannot post on a Colleen start page and then act shocked when I bring." These are just a few out of many possible ways to cut the loops while retaining the author's passionate tone.
You cannot post on a snark page and then act shocked when I bring her up. I mean, that is undeniable. When you strip away the stalling, the underlying logic is incredibly sound.
Right. It shifts the tone from feeling defensive to feeling utterly in control of the narrative.
Which brings us to a critical pivot point. Now that the pacing is tightened and the structure is organized, we can focus on how the core thesis itself is presented to the listener. Anchoring the narrative with a bold, upfront thesis prevents the audience from feeling lost in vague hints and behind-the-scenes whispers.
This is probably the most crucial aspect of the entire transcript.
As I understand it from the notes, the argument here is that the documentary is going to turn into a messy X versus X battle.
Yeah, that's the beating heart of the piece. The fear of retaliation and collateral damage.
Asians are counter-arguments to that idea.
Because the weakness is that the author severely delays their central point.
They totally bury the lead.
Completely. They hold back the idea that this is a vehicle for an ex-husband's revenge. By holding this back and apologizing for reading between the lines, the audience has to work far too hard to understand why the author is so fiercely opposed to the project.
It feels like that mystery box style of storytelling, right? Drop in little breadcrumbs to keep people hooked. Like, oh, journalists are talking, I don't want to say too much.
Right, exactly.
But isn't that a valid rhetorical strategy? If you give the audience breadcrumbs, doesn't the final reveal hit harder?
Well, mystery box storytelling works beautifully for fiction, but in commentary, authority is everything. When a creator apologizes for their own insight, it inadvertently signals that the thesis might not be structurally sound. They aren't building suspense, they're projecting insecurity.
Oh, that makes total sense. They're hedging because they're afraid of the backlash from the snark immunities. But by hedging, they actually make themselves look weaker.
Precisely. They have the insider perspective, but they present their conclusion almost as an afterthought.
So how do we flip this dynamic?
The suggestion is to state the core prediction and thesis immediately as a hook, and then use all the behind-the-scenes anecdotes, such as Trisha Paytas' commentary, as supporting evidence to validate that bold opening.
You show them the picture on the puzzle box before you hand them the pieces.
Yes. For concrete examples, open the documentary segment by stating outright, "This documentary isn't about truth. It's going to turn into a messy X versus X war, and I won't let people like Oliver and Becky be caught in the crossfire."
Wow, the stakes are instantly established. You are planting a flag.
Exact. Then, back this up by mentioning Trisha Paytas noting how odd it is for an ex to make a documentary, and Joshua confirming his involvement in the YouTube comments. Trisha isn't a vague hint anymore. She's active proof.
It completely changes the lens through which the audience views the creator's distress.
Right. Another option is framing the thesis as a direct warning to the viewers right away. These are just a handful of ways to front-load the thesis for maximum clarity and immediate audience buy-in.
When you front-load that thesis, suddenly the creator isn't just venting, they are on a mission to protect innocent people.
And if you are taking hits to protect vulnerable people, you are a hero, not a victim.
It really ties the whole narrative together perfectly. Well, to recap our 3 main takeaways. First, segregating tonal shifts into distinct acts to prevent emotional whiplash. Second, tightening repetitive verbal loops to improve pacing and project confidence. And finally, front-loading the core thesis to give the audience a clear roadmap of the drama right off the bat.
By implementing those adjustments, the inherent passion is entirely preserved, but it hits the listener with absolute precision.
Exactly. We invite you to implement these structural and pacing adjustments and submit your revised work back into the show for another critique. Keep pushing your work further.